is on the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's 11-10 Republicans over Democrats, so if he votes no on all the nominees, it could gum things up. You also heard Jeff Flake mention the senator from Delaware. That man is Democrat Chris Coons. He's the co-sponsor of the bill to protect Robert Mueller. He joins us now. Senator Coons, thank you very much for being with us. The majority leader says he talks to the president all the time. The president's not going to fire Robert Mueller based on what he sees, so why do we need this legislation?
Well, that's the ultimate question here. I have no reason to believe that President Trump won't take some precipitous action here. Let's go back and look at why there is a Mueller investigation in the first place. President Trump, in a fit of pique, fired the FBI director, James Comey, and then went on television to say that he did it because of this Russia thing. Last week, he forced the resignation of Attorney General Jeff Sessions, his own closest supporter in the Senate, when President Trump was first running for office. And he's made it very clear that his relationship with Attorney General Sessions soured, and he forced him out of his cabinet because he was upset about the Russia investigation and Sessions' recusal. He's replaced Jeff Sessions not with the Deputy Attorney General, Senate confirmed, who is the appropriate person to succeed him, but with a political insider who has, on CNN last year, said a whole lot of things discrediting or threatening the investigation. Why should we have any concerns? I don't know. The majority leader, if he watched your shows regularly, would be clear why we've got concerns. President Trump has a long history of doing and saying unpredictable things. This is a simple bipartisan measure that, if we took it up and passed it in the Senate, would prevent an entirely foreseeable constitutional crisis.
Tom Tillis, a Republican senator, has sponsored similar legislation in the past, but now says a vote on it is not urgent. Lindsey Graham has supported this concept in the past, now basically says it's not urgent. Are these Republican senators caving to the president's pressure?
Well, they would vote for this bill, I believe, if it came to the floor. What's going on here is that the majority leader is holding his caucus together. They are still co-sponsors of the bill. This is the same bill that was crafted by Senator Booker, myself, Tillis, and Graham last year. It got a 14-7 vote in the Judiciary Committee back in April. Both of them voted for it, and so did the committee chairman, Chuck Grassley. So as Senator Flake and I both said on the floor yesterday, in trying to force a floor vote, it's ready for action. It's been ready for action for months, and it is a small, simple step to protect Robert Mueller from interference or from unwarranted firing by the president or the now acting attorney general. Why not take this simple step? The argument that it's not needed flies in the face of the obvious reality of a president who takes unprecedented action.
So do you think Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, is running interference for the president?
Yes.
You do?
Yes. I see no other justification for refusing to bring forward such a simple bipartisan bill that takes existing Department of Justice regulations and strengthens them by putting them in statute.
Matt Whitaker has been acting Attorney General for a week now, a week plus a day. Have you seen any evidence yet that he has interfered in the Mueller investigation?
No, but I wouldn't see that evidence until it was too late. His actions to deny requests for subpoenas or for more funding or for an expanded scope would not be public and would not be reported to the Judiciary Committee or the general public unless someone leaked them. And if there's one thing that Robert Mueller's investigation has been well known for, he's a by-the-book career federal law enforcement leader, and his team has had virtually no leaks in the time that they've been running the investigation.
You know, one of the things that could happen at some point when Robert Mueller does write his report is that Whitaker could, I think unilaterally, decide to keep it from going public. Do you feel Congress needs to take action or should take action to make Robert Mueller's report public?
I do think it's important that whatever ultimate report comes out of Mueller's investigation be shared with the relevant committees of Congress, and depending on the outcome, I think it is in the best interest of the country. Frankly, regardless of outcome, I think it's in the best interest of the country if that report be made public so that millions of Americans who either firmly believe that there was no collusion and no inappropriate behavior can have that affirmed, or millions of Americans who believe there was collusion between a foreign hostile power and the president's campaign can have that view confirmed. I think it's important for all of us who have worked so hard to protect Robert Mueller's investigation to know that his ultimate work product will be shared.
Matt Whitaker, the House Judiciary Committee, and Democrats will control the House. Jerry Nadler, who will appear on our show in a little bit, says he wants to call Matt Whitaker before his committee first order of business in January. Do you feel that the Senate needs to ask him questions about his past? He's not confirmable at this point because he's only its acting attorney general, but do you feel he needs to be vetted by Congress?
Yes, I think he should recuse himself from oversight of the Mueller investigation. I frankly think the president should have followed DOJ procedure and the relevant statute for succession and made Rod Rosenstein the acting attorney general. But Matt Whitaker is someone who press reports have now revealed has very unusual legal ideas. He's criticized Marbury versus Madison, the foundational decision of American constitutional jurisprudence, as a candidate for the Senate in Iowa. He spoke about the validity of state nullification, an obscure idea that was largely dismissed after the American Civil War. He's got some pretty novel concepts and is not an appropriate person, in my view, to be the Attorney General of the United States and should be in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Our ranking member, Senator Dianne Feinstein, has requested just that, and so far Chairman Grassley has not acted.
You were also on the Foreign Relations Committee, and we just got word this morning that in Saudi Arabia, a number of individuals connected to the murder of Jamal Khashoggi will face the death penalty. Now, is that enough? Should that be enough for the United States, or does the president need to demand still more action, and do you think he will?
Well, 20 of us, an equal number of Republicans and Democrats on the Foreign Relations Committee, sent a letter to President Trump triggering something called the Global Magnitsky Act, which requires an investigation and then a report back to the Senate on whether sanctions should be imposed on Saudi Arabia. I find the Saudi story that this was some rogue team that on their own decided to go to their consulate in Istanbul and kidnap, torture, and murder an American resident journalist. I find that utterly incredible. And I think there should be an investigation by American law enforcement, and it should take into account what we've learned, what has been reported from Turkish intelligence, as well as other sources, and we should reach our own conclusions rather than letting the Saudis come up with a different version of events.
Senator Chris Coons, thanks so much for